The stars looked calm that night when the small Orin survey vessel drifted through the edge of an unknown sector. Its scanners picked up a pattern unlike anything the crew had seen before. It was a faint radio signal repeating over and over again in a rhythm that felt almost alive. The captain leaned forward in quiet wonder as the message grew clearer. It was a song from a world they had never charted, a small blue planet turning slowly around a yellow sun. The crew realized that they were hearing a call from a new civilization. The captain sent a report to the Orin Council and waited. After a long silence, the council replied with simple orders. They were to approach carefully, observe, and avoid any contact until they were sure the species could understand. Weeks passed as the vessel drew near the solar system. The crew stared at the strange planet that was full of clouds and oceans. The readings showed cities glowing across the dark side like stars of their own. The captain whispered that no young world had ever reached this level of light so fast. The Orins had spent tens of thousands of years learning to cross space. These humans, as their signals named them, had done it in only a few hundred. The crew felt uneasy. Something about this species seemed impatient, wild, and yet full of hope. When they finally entered orbit, they watched the human world from a distance. They saw tall towers and moving machines that ran on fire and metal. They watched storms form and fade across the oceans. Every hour brought a new message from the planet below, songs and speeches and laughter flowing into the void. The captain felt a strange emotion that Orins rarely spoke of. It was fear mixed with admiration. He ordered the ship's recorder to capture every sound. One day a young officer called out that a human craft had just launched from the surface. It was small and rough, not made for war, but it was heading toward the stars. The crew followed it silently. It carried no weapons, only instruments and a flag. The humans had named it a Pathfinder. It drifted without knowing that eyes from another world were watching. The captain finally spoke after a long silence. He said these humans were not like other young races that burned themselves out before touching the stars. These ones were stubborn. They reached beyond their limits again and again as if their hearts could not rest. The ship's logs grew thick with data. The crew learned that humans were divided into many nations. They argued, fought, and yet somehow continued to build together. The Orins could not understand how such disorder created progress. To them, unity was strength, but to humans, conflict seemed to fuel invention. They saw that humans dreamed of peace even while preparing for war. They laughed and cried in the same breath. They risked everything for ideas that had no value except in their hearts. The captain wrote in his report that this species might be dangerous not because of weapons, but because of spirit. Far across the galaxy, the council read his message with growing concern. The ancient members remembered a time when young races had risen and fallen. None had ever reached the speed that humans were climbing. The council debated for many days. Some said to isolate Earth. Others said to welcome them and guide them before they became a threat. In the end, they chose patience. They would observe longer. The council sent a single warning back to the captain. He was not to make contact under any reason. The young world must not know of their watchers, but fate did not wait. While the Orin ship hid in orbit, a burst of light crossed near them. It was another ship, not human, but Virel. The Virel Dominion had also heard the new signal. The Virel captain demanded to know why the Orins were there. When told that the council had claimed this observation zone, the Virel laughed. He said no one could own curiosity. The two ships kept their distance, both unwilling to start a conflict. Still, tension filled the silence between them. On Earth, the humans continued their daily lives, unaware that two alien vessels watched from the shadows. They sent more signals into space. Some were songs of love, others were stories about who they were and what they wanted. They spoke of friendship and discovery. The Orins listened to every word. Some began to feel sympathy for these beings who reached out to the stars with open hands. Others felt fear that such a naive desire could turn into chaos once they found out how vast the galaxy really was. One evening, the captain stood before the viewing screen, looking at the planet below. He asked his crew what they saw. One said beauty. Another said noise. A third said promise. The captain nodded and said that he saw all of it and something more. He saw potential that could shake the old order of the galaxy. He remembered the council's command, but he could not silence his curiosity. He ordered a small probe to descend into the atmosphere. It would stay hidden and gather simple data. The crew obeyed but felt the weight of his choice. The probe entered the sky over a great ocean and drifted through clouds. It recorded images of ships, cities, and people walking in the streets. The captain watched every frame. He saw faces full of emotion, children laughing, workers building, and soldiers training. He saw pain and kindness side by side. For a long time he said nothing. Finally, he whispered that the humans carried both creation and destruction in their hearts. He said that no one could predict which would win. The data from the probe returned to the council weeks later. The debate restarted louder than before. The virile Dominion demanded that the new species be contained. They feared another rival. The Orans argued that humanity might become an ally. The smaller species of the council listened quietly. They remembered how the Virel had once enslaved many of them. The thought of a new unpredictable force frightened everyone. Back in orbit, the Oran crew grew restless. They had been away from home too long. They wanted to finish the mission. The captain decided to send a final report before leaving. He summarized everything they had learned. He wrote that humanity was young but resilient, flawed but courageous. He ended with a single line. He said that the humans reminded him of the galaxy itself, vast, beautiful, and dangerous in equal measure. Then he sent the message and prepared to depart. As the engines warmed, something unexpected happened. The ship's sensors detected a burst of energy from the planet's surface. The humans had launched a new satellite, but this one carried a strong transmission signal. It aimed directly into deep space. The Orans intercepted the message. It was simple and full of hope. It said that whoever was out there was not alone anymore. The humans said they were ready to meet the unknown. The captain stared at the screen for a long time. He could feel the weight of the moment. He knew that if they answered, everything would change. Yet he also knew that silence might not save them forever. He turned off the transmission channel and ordered the ship to leave orbit. As the vessel slipped into faster-than-light travel, he sent one last private note to the council. It said, "They are not like us, their eyes hold something dangerous, hope." When the Oran vessel vanished into the dark, Earth continued to spin quietly below. The humans kept sending their messages into the sky, still waiting for an answer that would not come for years. On the other side of the galaxy, the council studied the reports and tried to predict what the rise of this small world would mean. The virile spies listened as well, already planning how to turn this discovery into advantage. Somewhere deep in their empire, a commander smiled and said that the galaxy had just grown smaller, and so the first step was taken without the humans even knowing. The silence of the stars had been broken. The old powers of the galaxy began to shift their gaze toward the newcomers. Some saw opportunity, others saw danger, but none could deny that something had changed. A new force had entered the story, one that did not fit into the old patterns of control and obedience. The humans had reached out with open hands, and the universe had felt the tremor. As months turned into years, whispers spread through the hidden channels of the great species. They spoke of the blue world that shone too brightly. They spoke of a people who dreamed too loudly. Many laughed at the thought that such a young race could matter. But a few remembered the captain's last words and grew uneasy. Hope was not a weapon, yet it had destroyed empires before. The Oran Council placed Earth under watch and declared it a protected system. The virile Dominion protested but did not dare challenge openly. Beneath all the politics, one truth began to form. The age of calm was ending. The story of humanity in the stars had not yet begun, but the echo of their arrival was already moving across the void. The galaxy trembled not because of fear, but because for the first time in ages something new had stirred its heart. In the deep silence between worlds, the memory of that first song from Earth still played, a fragile melody carrying the promise of change. The Oran Council room was silent as the latest report about Earth played on the screen. The leaders of the old races sat in their tall chairs watching the images of cities and people, listening to the songs that came from the blue world. They were not sure what to think of this new species that had learned to speak to the stars so fast. Some said the humans should be left alone until they understood their place. Others said they should be guided before they brought danger to the galaxy. No one could agree. Outside the council chamber, fleets moved quietly as the great powers prepared for a new struggle that had nothing to do with humans, yet everything to do with them. The virile Dominion and the Oran Council had been rivals for centuries. They shared treaties and trade but never trust. Each side had spies watching the other. Each side feared losing control. Now this small species had appeared at the edge of known space, and their arrival was like a spark near dry leaves. On Earth, life went on as always. People worked, argued, and dreamed about the stars. Governments were busy competing in science and defense. Mars had grown into a colony of red dust and metal domes. People there wanted more independence. The outer colonies mined asteroids and sent resources back to Earth. But they also began to feel they were being used. The dream of unity was fragile, yet even with all the tension, humanity was proud. They had built ships that could travel beyond their solar system. They had learned to live in places no one thought possible. They believed the stars were waiting for them. Dr. Ilan Ree sat in her small laboratory on the moon base, studying the faint radio echoes that had been recorded years ago. Most scientists thought they were just noise from space, but something in them felt too perfect. She kept listening until she began to notice a pattern. It was as if someone out there was listening too. She told her supervisors, but they laughed. They said no alien would care about humans. Still, she kept listening. She did not know that her work had already been noticed by Oran observers who were surprised that a human could detect their hidden signal so soon. They began to watch her closely. The Oran Council had finally decided to send a message to humanity through coded signals hidden in cosmic radiation. It was meant to be simple and safe. They wanted to test if the humans could respond without panic. The signal reached Dr. Ree's instruments one cold night. She was alone when the lines of data changed into a shape she had never seen before. It looked like language, but not from any known source. Her heart raced as she began to decode it. Days later, she realized it was a greeting. It said, "We see you and we wish you peace." She did not sleep that night. The next morning, she sent her findings to the United Earth Agency, but they silenced her report and classified it. They said the world was not ready for such news. They feared chaos if people found out aliens were real. While humanity argued in secret, the galaxy around them started to shake. The Varel Dominion accused the Oran Council of hiding a new ally. They believed the Orans planned to use humans as weapons or spies. The Council denied it, but the Viril did not believe them. Small battles broke out along their borders. Trade routes were blocked. Rumors spread fast. In hidden corners, pirate groups began to attack neutral stations. One such station was home to both Oran traders and small colonies of other races. One night, a Virel warship entered orbit pretending to chase smugglers, then opened fire. The Oran patrols were far away. No one expected help. Then a strange transmission came from an unknown fleet that had just entered the system. It was a human exploration group testing new jump drives. They heard the distress calls, and without waiting for orders, they turned toward the station. Captain Aaron Dross of the exploration ship Horizon had never seen an alien before. When his sensors picked up the burning station, he ordered his crew to help. His officers warned him that the attackers might be more advanced, but he did not care. He said people were dying, and that was reason enough. The human ships used strange tactics. They turned off lights and engines, then drifted close, using asteroids as cover. They launched small drones armed with improvised weapons. The Viril ship was powerful but slow. It was confused by the sudden noise and chaos. Within hours, the humans managed to disable its engines and send a message to the station, telling survivors to evacuate. When Oran rescue ships finally arrived, they found the Viril vessel crippled and the station safe. The humans had already left without asking for reward or recognition. The Orans could hardly believe what had happened. They sent the report to the Council, which now had proof that humanity was not a simple primitive race. The news spread fast, even though the Council tried to keep it quiet. The smaller species began to whisper that maybe these newcomers could protect them. The Virel called them dangerous animals that had no place in space. They demanded punishment for attacking one of their warships. The Orans defended the humans, saying it was an act of mercy, not war. The Virel did not care. They started to build fleets near the border. The Oran Council met again to decide what to do. Some wanted to invite humans as observers to keep them under control. Others wanted to cut all contact before it was too late. In the end, the council leader said they had no choice. The humans had already changed the balance. Ignoring them would only make things worse. Dr. Ree was secretly contacted by Oran diplomats who finally decided to reveal themselves to her. They appeared as holograms made of soft light in her laboratory one evening. She almost fainted when she saw them. They spoke slowly and carefully, trying to explain who they were. They told her that the galaxy was full of many species, and that humanity was now part of a greater story. They said they came in peace, but warned her that not all others would. She listened with tears in her eyes. She had dreamed of this moment all her life, but now it felt heavy and frightening. They asked her to prepare her leaders for official contact. She promised to try, though she knew it would not be easy. On Earth, the secret meeting of the United Earth Agency was filled with fear and pride. Some leaders wanted to open communication and learn. Others wanted to hide and arm themselves. Mars demanded that any contact include them as equals. The outer colonies said the same. Arguments grew louder. In the end, they agreed to send a message back through Dr. Ree's signal, repeating the words of peace. For the first time in history, humanity spoke to the galaxy. The reply came days later. It was not from the Oran Council, but from an unknown source. It said that humans were trespassing into matters beyond their reach, and that they would pay for their arrogance. The message carried the seal of the Virile Dominion. Earth went silent for days after that. The military went on alert. The Orans tried to calm the situation, but the Virile refused to listen. They sent fleets closer to human space, claiming it was for patrol. The Council warned them to stop, but they ignored it. Everyone knew a storm was coming. Captain Dross and his crew were called back to Earth as heroes, though much of their mission remained secret. He was restless. He had seen the vastness of the galaxy and could not forget it. He believed that humanity had a duty to step forward, not hide. He told his commanders that if war came, they must fight with courage but also compassion. He said that the universe was full of fear, and that maybe humans could bring something different. Some called him naive. Others listened quietly because they had seen what he had done at the station. Far away in Oran territory, the captain who had first discovered Earth sat alone reading the latest reports. He knew what was coming. He had warned the Council long ago that humans carried both danger and hope. Now both were spreading. The Virile Dominion was moving its fleets toward neutral space where human ships often traveled. The Orans began to prepare for defense, but they were slow and careful as always. The humans were faster. They built new ships out of old cargo vessels. They trained soldiers and pilots with little experience but strong will. They did not wait for perfect plans. They simply acted. As the first year of open contact ended, the galaxy began to change. Trade routes shifted. Old alliances broke. Small worlds that had been silent for centuries began to speak again. They wanted to choose sides before it was too late. Everywhere people talked about the humans. Some admired their bravery. Some feared their unpredictability. All agreed that the peace that had lasted for ages was now fragile. Dr. Ree stood on the balcony of the moon base watching Earth rise over the horizon. She thought about the Orans and the Virile and all the voices she had heard from beyond. She wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. She knew there was no turning back. The message had been sent. The universe had answered. Somewhere in the dark, the next chapter of their story was already being written. In the deep silence between stars, the ships of many races moved like shadows, preparing for what everyone knew was coming, though no one wanted to say it aloud. The galaxy was waiting for the first shot that would end the calm, and far away on the blue planet below, people looked up at the night sky full of stars, not knowing that their lives had already changed forever. The Virile Dominion Council Hall was full of voices as their leaders argued about how to deal with the humans. They had never feared a young species before, but this one felt different. The humans had fought their warship and won. They had done it with small ships and strange tactics that no one could predict. Some Virile commanders wanted to destroy Earth before it became a threat. Others warned that such a move would anger the Orans and start a galactic war. The leader of the Dominion listened in silence before finally saying that humans had to be taught their place. They would not attack Earth directly, but they would strike where humans were weakest. They would find one of their new colonies and make an example of it. Orders were sent and fleets began to move. On the other side of the galaxy, the Oran Council watched these movements with growing fear. They knew war was near. The Council wanted to protect the humans, but they were also afraid. The Virile were strong and ruthless. The Orans had not fought a full war in centuries. Their fleets were built for peacekeeping, not for battle. Some of the younger members of the Council said that the humans should defend themselves. Others said that if the humans fell, the Virile would only grow stronger. The Council finally decided to send a warning message to Earth. They told the humans that danger was coming and offered to share some basic defense technology. It was the first open act of trust between the two species. Captain Aaron Dross was assigned to lead the new defense program. He worked day and night turning cargo ships into fighters and freighters into mobile bases. The human engineers were creative. They built energy shields from mining equipment and weapons from old fusion tools. Every day more volunteers arrived. They came from Earth, Mars, and the colonies. They did not have the best ships, but they had determination. Dross believed that if they stood together, they could survive anything. He told his crew that they were not fighting to conquer, but to protect. He said that if humanity wanted respect, they had to earn it by standing firm. Dr. Elan Rhee was still working with the Orans through secret communication lines. She had learned much about their science and politics. She also learned that not all Orans agreed with helping humans. Some feared that giving humans advanced knowledge would destroy the balance of power. She was often caught between trust and fear. She wanted peace, but she could feel the storm growing stronger every day. She sent messages to her government begging them to avoid provocation, but the military leaders no longer listened. They said that peace could only exist through strength. When the attack came, it was sudden. A small human colony on the edge of the outer rim was hit by Virel raiders. The attackers came without warning, destroyed the communication tower, and began bombing the surface. Thousands were killed before the first human fleet could respond. Captain Dross led the rescue mission. His fleet arrived to find the colony burning. The Virel ships waited for them. It was a trap. The battle that followed lasted for hours. The human ships moved fast, diving between asteroids and firing from unexpected angles. The Virel were stronger, but they were not ready for such chaos. Dross lost half his fleet, but managed to drive the enemy away. The humans had saved some survivors, but the colony was gone. The news spread across the galaxy. Humanity had fought the Virel and survived. For the first time in ages, the mighty Dominion had been pushed back. The Oran Council could no longer pretend that this was a small border conflict. They called an emergency meeting. Some demanded to support the humans openly. Others said that joining them would bring total war. The council leader said that they had delayed too long. The Virel would not stop until they controlled everything. Humanity had shown courage that the older races had forgotten. The Orans voted to form an alliance with Earth. When the news reached Captain Dross, he was speechless. He had never thought that ancient beings would fight beside humans. He felt hope for the first time since the war began. The alliance was secret at first. Oran advisors arrived quietly on Earth. They taught humans how to upgrade their shields and engines. In return, the humans showed them new ways to adapt and improvise. The Orans were amazed by how fast humans learned. They said that human minds moved like fire, unpredictable but alive. Together they began to build a joint fleet. It was small compared to the Virel armadas, but it was full of determination. They named it the Unity Fleet. Captain Dross was chosen to lead it. Dr. Rhee became the main link between both species. She traveled between ships and stations, helping the crews understand each other. The Virel Dominion was furious when they discovered the alliance. They sent a message to the Oran Council demanding they surrender the humans or face destruction. The Council refused. The Dominion declared war. Within weeks, the galaxy was filled with battles. Worlds that had been peaceful for generations were suddenly under fire. The Unity Fleet fought bravely. In many battles, they were outnumbered, but never outwilled. Humans used unexpected strategies that often confused the Virel commanders. They would pretend to retreat, then strike from behind. They would overload their own reactors to blind enemy sensors. They did not fight by the rules of the old empires, and that made them dangerous. Dr. Rhee stayed aboard the command ship, helping coordinate alliances. She watched as Orans and humans began to understand each other. At first, they had been afraid to work together, but now they fought side by side. The Orans admired human bravery. The humans respected Oran discipline. Slowly, trust grew. During one battle near a dying star, Captain Dross saved an Oran cruiser by ramming his own ship between it and an incoming missile. He was injured, but survived. The Orans began to call him Guardian of the Line. His name spread across the galaxy as a symbol of unity. But not all Orans supported the alliance. Some of their leaders began secret talks with the Virel, hoping to end the war through surrender. They believed that fighting beside humans would only bring more chaos. When Dr. Rhee found out, she sent a warning to Dross. He confronted the Oran Council demanding loyalty. He said that betrayal would destroy everything they had built. The council leader agreed and exposed the traitors. For the first time in Oran history, a human officer stood inside their great hall and spoke to them as an equal. Many Orans saw that moment as the beginning of a new age. The war dragged on. Both sides lost ships and worlds. The Virel began to use cruel tactics. They attacked civilian planets hoping to break morale. Humanity answered with courage. Every attack only made them fight harder. On Earth, people worked together like never before. Factories produced ships day and night. Volunteers joined the defense fleets. Even Mars and the outer colonies forgot their differences. The war had made them one people. Captain Dross often said that the Virel could destroy their bodies but never their spirit. Those words spread like fire across the fleets. 1 year after the alliance began, the Unity fleet launched a major operation to push the Virel out of neutral space. The battle lasted for days. Thousands of ships fought across the void. The humans led the first wave while the Orans followed with heavy support. The Virel fought fiercely, but they were not ready for the creativity of human tactics. Dross used asteroids as cover and lured the enemy into traps. At the end of the battle, the Virel flagship was destroyed. It was the first time in centuries that the Dominion had lost a major fleet. The Orans cheered. The humans celebrated quietly, knowing the war was far from over. After the battle, Dr. Ree looked at the stars and wondered what it all meant. She had dreamed of meeting other worlds, but not like this. She wished there had been another way. Yet she also saw something new growing between species that had once been strangers. They were learning from each other, changing each other. She began to believe that maybe this was the true beginning of humanity's place in the galaxy. Kiro. Away in the ruins of their fleet, the Virel leaders planned revenge. They refused to accept defeat. They began building a weapon that could end the war in one strike. They called it the World Eater. It was designed to consume entire planets. They believed that once it was complete, no one would dare stand against them. The galaxy would soon learn what true fear was. But among the humans and Orans, hope was stronger than fear. The Unity fleet was wounded but alive. They had proven that even against ancient empires, a young species could stand tall. The galaxy had changed forever. The old balance was gone. The name of humanity was now known across thousands of worlds. Some feared it. Others whispered it with pride. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, a signal drifted through the dark, carrying a simple message from Earth to anyone who might listen. It said, "We fight because we must, and we protect because we can." That message reached even the hearts of those who had once doubted. For the first time in a very long age, the galaxy felt something new. It felt the rise of hope. The galaxy had begun to divide itself between those who saw hope in humanity and those who saw a threat. On every world, people whispered about Earth and the strange courage of its people who had come so far so fast. In the Oran Council chambers, long debates continued day and night. The older members argued that humans were reckless and dangerous, but the younger ones said the future could not be built by fear. In the end, a fragile decision was made to send a small Oran delegation to Earth to begin peaceful talks. The news spread slowly through secret channels because the Council feared that the Virel Dominion would use it as an excuse for war. On Earth, the message reached Dr. Ree, who had now become the quiet link between two worlds. She had spent many nights reading the strange patterns of Oran speech and learning how their thoughts were shaped by color and tone. The day she received confirmation that the Oran delegation was coming, she stood in silence for a long time, looking out at the moon and wondering how humanity would greet its first guests from another star. The governments of Earth argued about where to meet them. Some wanted it to be on neutral ground on the moon, while others insisted it had to be on Earth itself, so that no one could say they were afraid. In the end, they chose a small orbital station, high above the planet where the air was still and the stars seemed close enough to touch. Captain Aaron Dross was chosen as one of the security officers for the meeting because of his bravery during the rescue at the station. He did not feel like a soldier now. He felt like a guardian of something much bigger. When the orange ship arrived, it moved with a grace that no human vessel could match. It shimmered like glass touched by sunlight and drifted silently into dock. The humans watched in awe as the Orans stepped through the airlock dressed in robes that shimmered with colors that changed with their breathing. They did not speak at first. They only bowed their heads and waited. Dr. Ree stepped forward and greeted them with the simple words she had practiced for weeks. The leader of the Orans, an elder named Seller, responded in a soft voice that echoed strangely in the air. For the first time in history, words passed between Earth and the stars. The first meeting lasted only an hour, but it changed everything. The Orans spoke of peace and learning, but also of danger. They told the humans that the Virel Dominion had already declared them a rogue species. They warned that fleets were moving toward the outer colonies. The leaders of Earth tried to stay calm, but their faces showed fear. They had expected peace and curiosity, not threats. After the Orans left, the humans held another meeting behind closed doors. Some said they must arm themselves before the Virel reached them. Others said that would only prove the Dominion right. Dr. Ree argued that humanity must not let fear rule them. She said that to survive they must learn to listen. Her words were heard, but not all believed them. Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, the tension grew. Ships began to disappear near the edges of known space. Small mining stations reported strange signals before they went silent. The Mars colony demanded more defense ships, but Earth had none to spare. The people of Mars began to build their own weapons from mining tools and cargo drones. They said they would not wait for help that never came. Captain Dross was sent to lead a small fleet to protect the trade routes, but his orders were unclear. He was told to defend but not provoke, to act but not start a war. It was an impossible balance. One cold night, his fleet detected a large ship moving through the belt without a beacon. They sent a signal asking it to identify itself, but no reply came. The scanners showed energy patterns that did not match any known human design. Dross ordered his ships to stay hidden among the rocks while he watched. Then the unknown ship opened fire on a small mining station. Without waiting for permission, he ordered his fleet to attack. The battle was short and fierce. The alien ship was stronger, but the humans fought like shadows, darting between asteroids and firing from angles that no computer predicted. When it was over, the strange ship broke apart and drifted into the void. They later learned it had been a Virel scout testing the defenses of human space. The victory brought cheers on Mars and Earth, but the Oran Council trembled when they heard. They knew the Virel would not forgive this. In the Dominion's dark halls, the leaders gathered to watch the recordings of the battle. Their eyes glowed with cold anger as they spoke of revenge. They said the humans had to be punished or others would follow their example. Within days, their fleets began to move. The Orans begged them to stop, but the Virel refused. They sent a message to all systems saying they would cleanse the sky of the violent newcomers. The Orans called their allies, but few were brave enough to join. Everyone feared that the balance of power was about to break. On Earth, the alarms sounded across every base and colony. The governments announced that humanity was now under threat. People rushed to shelters. Factories turned to building weapons. Engineers worked day and night to finish the new defense grid around the planet. Captain Dross was ordered to hold the line near Mars. He knew it would not be easy. His fleet was small and old, but his people were ready. He told them that they were not fighting for victory, but for survival. He said that if they stood together, they might show the galaxy that humans were not to be destroyed so easily. When the first Virel fleet appeared near the edge of the solar system, their ships filled the screens like a storm of fire. The human defense network trembled as it tried to track them. The Orans sent a small group of ships to help, but they could not arrive in time. Captain Dross watched the incoming wave and whispered to himself that he would not let them reach Earth. The battle that followed was one of the most desperate ever fought. The human ships moved in patterns that made no sense to the Virel computers. They cut their engines and drifted like debris before suddenly turning and striking from behind. They used the gravity of asteroids to slingshot their weapons farther than expected. For hours, the sky burned red and gold. On the moon, Dr. Ree sat in the command center receiving broken messages from the front. She heard Dross's voice once saying they had taken down a carrier but lost 2 ships. Then there was static. She kept listening, afraid that silence meant the end. When the transmission returned, it was full of noise, but one line came through clearly. It said, "We are still here." She closed her eyes and whispered the words again and again. Hours later, the Oran ships finally arrived, and together they forced the Virel fleet to retreat. The humans had won their first true space war, though, at a terrible cost. Half the fleet was gone and Mars was scarred, but they had survived. When the battle reports reached the galaxy, the reactions were mixed. Some races were terrified that humans had defeated the Virel so quickly. Others saw hope that maybe the old powers were not untouchable. The Oran Council declared that humanity had earned a seat at their table. The Virel called it a crime and swore vengeance. The galaxy trembled as both sides began to prepare for what everyone now knew was coming. The age of peace was over. The age of struggle had begun. Dr. Ree stood once more on the balcony of the moon base looking at the stars. She thought of Captain Dross and the others who had not returned. She thought of the Orans who had risked their own safety to help. She knew the next steps would be harder. The humans had proven they could fight, but now they had to prove they could lead. The galaxy was watching them with eyes full of fear and wonder. She whispered softly into the dark that humanity would not turn back. The stars were no longer silent. They had called and humanity had answered. The question now was what the answer would cost. The stars seemed quieter after the great battle, but the silence did not bring peace. Every world that had watched the fight now prepared for what would come next. The Virel Dominion retreated, but only to gather its strength again. Their pride had been wounded, and their leaders swore they would not rest until humanity was erased from the stars. On Earth, people celebrated the victory, yet deep inside they knew the war was far from over. They had seen what the enemy could do, and they understood that the next strike would be much larger. The Oran Council sent word that a great meeting would be held to decide if they should form an alliance strong enough to stand against the Dominion. Dr. Elon Rhee was invited as the first human representative ever to walk into that ancient hall. The journey to the Oran homeworld was long and quiet. The ship moved through the dark fields of space with only the faint hum of engines and the whisper of distant signals. Dr. Rhee spent most of her time looking at the endless stars and thinking about what she would say when she reached the council. She knew she was not just speaking for herself or for Earth, but for every living person who hoped for peace. When she finally stepped onto the shining surface of Oran Prime, she was almost overwhelmed. The sky was filled with tall towers made of light, and the air glowed softly, as if the world itself was alive. The Orans greeted her with calm faces but curious eyes. To them, humans were still a mystery, a race that had risen from dust to challenge the strongest empire in the galaxy. Inside the council chamber, the air felt heavy. Representatives from many worlds filled the seats, each speaking in their strange and beautiful ways. Some used words, others color, and some simple music. Dr. Rhee stood when her turn came and spoke slowly in the simple voice she always used. She told them that humanity did not seek power or conquest. She said they wanted only to live free, to learn, and to protect their home. Her words did not have the grace of the Orans or the logic of the elder races, but they carried warmth. The hall grew quiet when she finished. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then an old Oran elder rose and said that perhaps this new species had something the galaxy had forgotten, the will to hope even in the face of fear. While the council debated, far from Oran Prime, Captain Aaron Dross and the few remaining ships of his fleet were rebuilding their strength near Mars. The crew worked without rest, repairing engines and weapons, using whatever parts they could find. They knew they would be called again soon. Dross walked the decks each night, listening to the low hum of machines and the faint voices of his people. He thought of the friends he had lost and of the quiet message Dr. Rhee had sent before she left for Oran Prime. She had said that she believed in him and that the stars would need his courage again. Those words stayed in his heart and gave him strength when sleep would not come. The Virel Dominion moved faster than anyone expected. Hidden fleets began to strike at smaller colonies, destroying communication arrays and mining outposts. They wanted to cut humanity off from its allies before the alliance could be formed. Reports came in from every direction, messages filled with static and fear. On one cold night, a signal reached Mars showing that a large force was approaching the outer moons of Jupiter. Dross called his officers and looked at the map in silence. They knew they were outnumbered, but he said they would fight anyway. He told them that even if they could not win, they could delay the enemy long enough for the council to finish its work. The battle near Jupiter was brutal and silent. The human ships moved like ghosts through the rings while the Virel ships burned with blue fire. For every human ship destroyed, another one slipped through the dust and struck back. The fight lasted for days. When it ended, the space around Jupiter was full of wreckage, but the Virel advance had stopped. Captain Dross's ship was among the last still moving. His engines were failing and his crew was exhausted, but they had done what they came for. The message of their stand reached the Oran Council just as the final vote was being taken. When Dr. Rhee heard the report, she felt tears in her eyes, but she also saw the faces of the council members grow firm. They could no longer stand aside. The alliance was born that night. The next weeks were filled with movement. Oran fleets joined human ships and began to train together. Other smaller races that had lived in fear of the Dominion now stepped out of the shadows and offered help. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to unite not for power, but for survival. The humans shared their strange ways of fighting. and the Orin shared their knowledge of energy fields and healing systems. Together they built new ships faster and stronger than either could alone. Dr. Ree watched this with quiet pride but also with worry. She knew that every alliance in history came with its own risks, and that trust was not something that could be built in a day. As the alliance prepared for war, the Virel Dominion gathered its full power. Massive fleets formed near their twin suns, each ship carrying weapons that could shatter moons. Their leaders spoke to their people saying that the galaxy had forgotten who ruled it, and that soon all would remember. They believed that fear would make the smaller worlds abandon the humans, but this time, fear worked against them. The stories of Captain Dross and his crew spread across the stars and turned into something larger than truth. He became a symbol of what it meant to stand when no one else would. Even the Orins began to speak of him with respect. Somewhere in the dark fields near Saturn, his ship floated half-broken but still alive, its signal faint but steady. When Dr. Ree finally returned to Earth, she found a world that had changed. Cities were working together as never before. People no longer spoke of nations but of humanity as one. She walked through the training yards where new pilots learned to fly side by side with Orin instructors. The air was filled with the sound of engines and hope. Yet beneath it all there was a quiet fear, a sense that the real test had not yet come. She knew the Virel would not stop until they had broken the alliance or destroyed themselves trying. The Council called the final plan Operation Dawn, and its goal was to take the fight to the Dominion before they could strike again. On the eve of the operation, Captain Dross's repaired ship, the Horizon, joined the main fleet. When he stepped onto the bridge for the first time in months, his crew cheered. They knew what it meant to see him there. He looked out at the endless black and thought of how far they had come from that first day on the station, when humanity still believed it was alone. Now they were part of something far greater. He sent a single message to Dr. Ree that said, "We are ready." She received it in silence and whispered that the stars were watching. When the Alliance fleet left orbit, it looked like a river of light flowing through space. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds moving as one. The Orins led the front lines while the humans guarded the flanks. The smaller races carried supplies and healing stations. Every person on every ship knew that what happened next would shape the galaxy for centuries. The first target was a massive Virel fortress built into the heart of a dying star. It was said to be impossible to reach, but the humans had found a way through its defenses, using the same strange instincts that had saved them before. The fleet moved in silence through the burning clouds. When the first weapons fired, the star itself seemed to scream. The battle that followed was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Virel fought with fury, the Alliance with determination. Ships burned like falling suns. The orange shields shimmered and broke, but the human ships pushed through the gaps. Captain Dross's Horizon took the lead and drove straight into the enemy lines. His crew fought until the engines glowed red. Dr. Ree listened from the command center far away as reports came in faster than she could read. She heard Dross's voice once more saying, "We are holding the line." Then the signal faded. She waited through the long silence that followed until at last a faint light appeared on the scanners, showing that the fortress was gone. The Alliance had won, but at a heavy cost. Many ships were lost and countless lives with them. The star burned dimly now, its fire fading into quiet ash. Yet in that silence something new was born. The galaxy had seen that unity was stronger than fear. The name of Earth was now spoken with respect, not because of power, but because of courage. Dr. Ree stood on the bridge of the Orin flagship and looked out at the endless sky. She knew the war was not yet over, but she also knew that humanity had already changed the stars forever. The galaxy trembled not from fear now, but from the awakening of hope. The galaxy was quiet, but not at peace. The Great War had ended, yet the stars still carried the marks of fire. Whole worlds had gone dark and fleets floated as silent monuments to the courage and pain that had passed. The Alliance had survived, though barely. The Orins were rebuilding their cities. The smaller races were returning to their home systems, and humanity was trying to understand what it had become. On Earth, the people spoke of victory, but their eyes carried the weight of loss. They had fought beside beings who once feared them, and now looked at the sky wondering if they had earned their place among them. Dr. Ilan Ree walked through the halls of the new orbital council station, where leaders of every race met to shape the fragile peace. The air was full of quiet voices and cautious hope. She had been chosen to represent Earth once again, not because she was the strongest, but because she had always believed in understanding before force. The Orin elder sailor met her in the long corridor made of glass that looked out on the blue curve of Earth. He said that the galaxy would need patience and faith now more than ever. She nodded, knowing that peace was often harder to hold than war. Together they entered the meeting chamber where the first galactic charter was to be signed. The sight filled her with wonder. Orins, humans, and other beings sat side by side with translators whispering softly in every tongue. The words spoken that day were simple. No world would stand alone again. Every voice would be heard. Every life would be valued. When she signed her name, she felt a tremor pass through her hands, not from fear, but from the sense that history was watching. Far beyond the council walls, Captain Aaron Dross was alive, though few knew it yet. His ship, the Horizon, had been thought lost during the final strike on the Virel fortress, but a fragment of its signal had been found drifting near the ruins of the star. Rescue teams sent by the Orins had searched for weeks before they found the wreck half buried in cosmic dust. Inside, they discovered survivors clinging to life with broken systems and little air. Dross was among them, weak but still breathing. When the medics brought him aboard their ship, he whispered only one thing. "Is it over?" When they told him yes, he closed his eyes and slept for a long time. News of his survival spread slowly through the Alliance, and when it reached Earth, people wept with relief. For them, he had become more than a soldier. He was a symbol that humanity could endure anything. Months passed as the wounds of war began to heal. The Virel Dominion was broken. Many of their worlds surrendered, while others fell into silence. Some of their people even came forward seeking peace. Dr. Ree met with a small group of them on the council station. They were tall and silent, their eyes bright with shame and sorrow. One of them said that they had followed leaders who believed only in power, but now they wanted to learn another way. She listened and told them that the door to peace was open to all who wished to walk through it. It was not forgiveness they sought, but a chance to begin again. The meeting ended without ceremony, but it marked the first time in history that humans and Virel spoke without weapons between them. Captain Dross spent many weeks recovering on the Orin medical world. The doctors were surprised at how quickly he healed, though he still walked with a limp from the old wounds. He spent most of his time looking out at the twin moons and thinking about those who had not returned. He received letters from Earth filled with gratitude and praise, but he felt uneasy reading them. He said to one of the doctors that heroes were only people who had run out of choices. When he was strong enough, he returned to the Horizon, which was now being rebuilt as a museum ship. The old metal still bore the scars of battle, but inside the corridors new life stirred. He walked through them, touching the walls as if greeting old friends. In the control room, he found a small plaque placed there by his crew. It said, "We held the line." He stood there for a long time in silence. Dr. Ree visited him not long after. They sat together on the observation deck watching the sunrise over Mars. For a while, neither spoke. Then she told him that the Alliance wanted him to lead the new defense command that would protect the borders of peaceful space. He smiled faintly and said he had hoped never to wear a uniform again. She told him that the galaxy still needed guardians, not to fight but to remind everyone what it had cost to build peace. He looked at her and nodded, saying he would do it if she promised never to stop speaking for reason. They both laughed softly at that, and for a moment the war felt far away. In the following years, the Alliance grew stronger. New trade routes opened between worlds that had once been enemies. Children on distant planets learned the story of Earth and how a small world had stood against the storm. The Orins shared their science and the humans shared their art. Together they built new cities that floated in space, places where no single race claimed ownership. They called them Unity Stations. Dr. Ree became one of the guiding voices of the Council, while Captain Dross led the defense fleet that watched the quiet edges of known space. They did not see each other often, but they sent messages across the stars. Each message ended with the same words, "We are still here." But not everything was simple. Shadows lingered beyond the borders where remnants of the old Dominion gathered. Strange signals began to appear from the outer void, whispers that spoke of new powers rising. The Council debated what to do. Some said they should ignore them and focus on rebuilding, while others warned that peace could only last if guarded. Dr. Ree argued that they should explore, not with fleets of war, but with ships of understanding. Captain Dross agreed, though he quietly prepared his fleet just in case. The first exploration ships left a year later, carrying scientists, diplomats, and dreamers. They sailed into the unknown, carrying the banner of the Alliance, and the memory of what had been lost. One of those ships carried a young pilot who had once served under Dross. Before leaving, she sent him a message saying that she hoped to find new friends out there, not new enemies. He smiled when he read it and sent back a simple reply saying that was the best kind of mission. When her ship disappeared into the darkness beyond the last beacon, he stood at the window of his command room and watched until the light was gone. He thought about how far they had come since the days when humanity first reached for the stars, and he whispered that the journey was only beginning. Years later, when Dr. Ree was old, she returned to Earth to live near the sea. The wars were now stories told in schools, and the children listened with wide eyes when she spoke of the first meeting between worlds. One evening, she sat watching the sunset and saw a ship rise from the horizon heading toward the stars. She smiled and said softly that the galaxy no longer trembled from fear, but from the footsteps of those who dared to dream. Far away on the Unity station, Captain Dross looked at the same stars and felt the same thought without speaking it. Across the endless night, the old and the young, the human and the Orin, the once enemy and the new friend, all shared the same quiet hope that the stars would never again burn with war but shine with life. The galaxy was vast and full of unknown worlds, but now it was also full of stories of courage and unity. Humanity had stepped into the conflict and changed everything, not by conquest, but by the strength of its heart. The name of Earth was no longer a warning, but a promise. The galaxy had learned that even the smallest world could shake the heavens when it stood together. And so as the ships of peace moved through the starlit dark, carrying the voices of many races, the stars themselves seemed to whisper back, "We are still here,